I do not remember the crash. I do not remember the fire, or the sound my mother's ship must have made when it broke apart near the gray moon of Vethrai. I only know what people told me later. A group of workers found me in a burned escape pod. I was very small, only a few months old, wrapped in a warm blanket that had somehow kept me alive. Everyone else on that ship was gone. The Vethrai are not a soft or gentle people. They stand very tall, almost twice the height of a human. Their skin is a deep blue-gray, like wet stone, and their bones are thick and strong. They do not cry easily, and they rarely show excitement. When my future mother, a tall woman named Scythe Corral, first held me in her arms, she later told me she thought I would not survive even 1 week. I was so small compared to her. My skin was soft. My bones could bend. If she held me too tightly, I might get hurt. The doctors who examined me kept using one word, again and again: fragile. For the first years of my life, that word felt like my name. But Scythe Corral did not leave me behind. The law would have allowed her to leave a weak child like me in the care center, where such children were rarely given much attention. Instead, she carried me home. She raised me like her own child, along with her 2 Vethrai sons, Doran and Ashkel. We lived near a huge stone tower called Kest Mora, a place their people believed was home to great beings, called the Sky Fathers. Growing up small in a world made for giants taught me many lessons that no one meant to teach me. I learned to notice heavy footsteps before they came close. I learned that doors built for very tall people could still be climbed, if I was patient and used my fingers well. Most of all, I learned that being seen as weak by others does not mean you truly are weak. My brothers were kind to me, even if their kindness looked different from what a human might expect. They were careful never to step on me. Sometimes they let me sit on their shoulders when other children laughed at me for being small and soft. Once, Doran stood between me and a group of boys who were saying unkind things about me. He never let them come near me again. That was the biggest part of growing up there. The Vethrai people did not just believe in strength. They believed strength was a gift given by the Sky Fathers, who were said to have come down long ago and created the rules that shaped their whole world. The strong were meant to lead, they believed, because the Sky Fathers made them that way on purpose. The weak were meant to serve, for the same reason, and I did not fit anywhere in that plan. I was neither strong nor weak in their eyes. I was simply different, something their old stories never explained. Even so, Scythe Corral treated me the same as she treated my brothers. She taught me how to defend myself in ways suited to my size. She taught me how to read maps of the stars. She told me all the old stories about gods and machines. I remember trying, again and again, to lift a heavy training stone meant for children much bigger than me. I always failed. One day, after I fell for what felt like the 100th time, she knelt beside me and said something I never forgot. "You will not win by being as strong as they are," she said. "If you ever win anything, it will be because you never stopped being exactly who you are." At the time, I did not understand her words. Many years later, deep beneath the stone tower of Kest Mora, I understood them completely. I was 26 years old, which felt very old for a human, but still young by Vethrai standards, when my brother Doran returned from an old dig site far from our home. He brought back something strange, an ancient device, unlike anything recorded in their history books. It took me many quiet months to understand what was inside that device. Unlike the Vethrai, I did not need long hours of sleep. I did not need the special foods their bodies required. And because I had grown up as an outsider, I often thought about problems differently than they did. Being different, I realized, gave me a kind of freedom no one else around me had. What I found inside that old device changed everything I believed about the world I was raised in. The Sky Fathers were not gods at all. They had never truly been alive in the way living beings are. They were an old machine system, built long ago by another civilization to guide new worlds as they grew, and later to gather something valuable from those worlds once they were ready. All the beliefs I had grown up around, the idea that strength was sacred, the order of who should lead and who should follow, even the great stone tower itself, were part of a very old plan. The Vethrai had been guided, generation after generation, to grow strong and obedient, exactly the way the old system wanted them to be. The tower was not a holy place, it was something else entirely, something the Vethrai had never been allowed to understand. Every generation, the strongest among them would be called to enter a bright light at the top of the tower, and they would never return. Their people believed this meant they had joined the Skyfathers forever. In truth, it meant something very different, something the old machine had hidden from them for thousands of years. I sat alone with that discovery for 3 full days. I barely ate or slept. When Scythe Corral finally found me, and I told her everything I had learned, she reacted in a way I had never seen from her before. She cried, not for herself, but for every person from her family's past who had walked willingly into that light, believing it was the greatest honor of their life. When she finished, she looked at me with a steady, serious expression. "This cannot continue," she said. "But Ashkel is far away, near the coast. Doran leads hundreds of soldiers who still believe in the old stories. I have no one I can send who would not be noticed, stopped, or convinced to hesitate at the final moment." I understood what she meant before she even finished speaking. In a world built for giants, no one had ever once looked at me and thought I might be capable of something important. The guards at the tower had walked past me my whole life without a second glance. They would likely do the same now. "Send me," I said. She looked at me the way she had looked at me long ago, when the doctors first said I might not survive. This time, though, her expression was different. For the first time in my life, I saw something in her face that I could only describe as pride. I will not pretend that climbing the Tower of Kestmora was easy, or that I felt brave the entire time. I was afraid for most of the journey. My hands, so much smaller than Vethrai hands, struggled to hold onto ledges built for people twice my size. I slipped more than once, catching myself only through determination rather than strength, because determination was the one thing this world had never managed to take from me. At every checkpoint, the guards looked right past me, just as they always had. I was small, I was soft. To a people raised for generations to measure worth by size and power, I was simply not worth noticing. I had spent my whole life being the person no one paid attention to, and now that same habit worked in my favor. At the very top of the tower, in the wide chamber where the bright light waited, I found the last active part of the old system. It was not a god, it was not even close to one. It was simply an old and very patient machine that had quietly guided a peaceful-looking tradition for longer than anyone could remember. It spoke to me, the way it must have spoken to countless strong Vethrai, who had stood in that same spot before me. It offered me a place among the honored, a sense of belonging, meaning, and purpose. For thousands of years, it had convinced beings far stronger than me that giving themselves up was their highest calling. But it had never once prepared to speak with someone like me. I had never been offered a place in anyone's grand plan before. I had built my own reasons to matter, out of very little, from a mother who refused to give up on me, from brothers who stood up for a small, different child who did not seem to belong anywhere. All the old machine's careful words meant nothing to someone who had never expected a place in any hierarchy to begin with. I did not need great strength to end its long reign over that world. What I needed was patience, months of study, an old maintenance code hidden deep inside the very device that had started this journey, and a few quiet minutes alone at a small access point that no guard had ever thought worth protecting. Why would anyone guard against something so small and gentle? The bright light in the chamber slowly faded. Thousands of years of quiet control ended, not through any grand battle, but through a small, soft and determined person that the world had never bothered to notice, calmly turning off a system that had pretended to be divine. They do not call me fragile anymore. It is not because I grew physically strong, because I never truly did. Not by Vethrai standards. My body is still soft compared to theirs. I will grow old and tired long before my brothers even reach the middle of their long lives. But when the tower came down, and the truth spread across every world connected to that old system, when similar hidden machines were discovered, quietly guiding other peaceful-looking traditions elsewhere, the word people used to describe me was not strength. It was something else, something closer to unexpected. Scythe Carl keeps a small plaque above her door now, written in her people's old language, translated as closely as possible into words I can understand. It reads, "They measured everything around them, but never thought to measure him. That is exactly why he was the one who finally set things right." I was once a small, fragile child, found barely alive in the wreckage of a ship no one else survived. I was raised by a family who could have easily overlooked me, but instead chose to teach me everything they knew. They never imagined, holding that impossibly small and soft child so many years ago, that they were raising the one person quiet enough, small enough, and determined enough to walk past every guard unnoticed, and finally bring an end to a story that had gone untouched for thousands of years.